Welcome everybody to this first KIT Intercultural webinar. We thought it was a good way to keep in touch with you during the Corona period because we're all kind of isolated. We are very overwhelmed and well, thank you so much for your interest because we had over 260 registrations. I don't know if you're all there, we'll check later. What we're going to do today is, first I'll give you an overview of what is intercultural effectiveness, how do we see this? And then we'll look at what is the impact of intercultural differences and perceptions on virtual teamwork and how to deal with it. I'll talk to you for about 30 minutes. After that, we'll have 15 minutes of Q&A. In the meantime, while I'm talking, you feel free to actually answer your questions at the Q&A, and I'll look at it later. And at the end, when we do the 15 minutes quick Q&A and your question is not picked out by me, no worries, because I'll get back to you on email. And I will make sure that you get an answer. And also, this is being recorded. So later on, we'll send you a link and you can review what we've discussed today. Now, I am very curious. These 260 people that have registered, and maybe not all there, but I hope a lot of you are there. Where do you come from? Do you have experience in working in a virtual team? And how do you feel? Is it productive? Do you feel at ease? Do you feel comfortable? You have a few seconds to answer these two questions. I'm very curious to see. Okay, I see, guys. This is nearly it. We're closing the poll. And let's see what the results are. All right. We see that the majority of you are really working from home, maybe now, and in working in virtual teams. And also, quite a large group feel it's somewhat challenging. Well, I'm very curious to see later on in the Q&A what your challenges are and if what we shared today has helped you to meet with these challenges. So, let me explain to you how we look at effective cooperation in virtual teams. Actually, at KIT, we have this structure. Oh no, let me introduce, sorry, I forgot. Let me introduce myself first. I'm experienced as a project leader that's quite target-oriented and to the point. I work at KIT as an HR business partner for nearly 2 years now, and I've worked before in Asia and the States and Western Europe. I've acquired quite a lot of experience as a trainer, but also as a management consultant in these different regions. At KIT, we know a specific structure. We have the knowledge units and we have the business units. And I work for KIT Intercultural Professional, and this is one of the business units. The knowledge units focus on sex and gender, which is socio-economic development, and gender to actually create opportunities for the gender equality, and the health, which is actually focusing on modern and nowadays health management. The business units, actually hospitality is quite an important part of it because we have this beautiful location. And also we have a real estate part because we do not use all of the building, and we have a lot of startups that actually focus on the SDGs, as we are also an SDG ambassador in the Netherlands, and our SDG house is also reaching out to big corporates. And we have a lot of startups that actually are housed within our beautiful building. And IP, Intercultural Business, Intercultural Professionals, is providing training and consultancy. Now, how do we look at intercultural effectiveness? We feel that intercultural effectiveness starts with self-awareness. Know yourself, know what your habits are, know what your preferences are, know what your patterns are. And if you know that, then you can also try to imagine what this will evoke from another person. Of course, the way you behave, your patterns, your preferences, it all depends on your cultural backgrounds. To how many cultures have you been exposed? Have you lived in different countries? Have you worked in different countries? Have you studied abroad? Whatever. Now, the good news is that you can actually develop your intercultural competences. You can learn how to become more open-minded and to deal more flexible. And the most important thing, you need to be curious to be able to develop it. Now, culture is actually layered. And where it tends to go wrong is if you compare it to an iceberg, that we only see the tip of the iceberg of another person's makeup and habits and patterns. And this is only the outside. So the important thing is that your drivers are actually under the water level and not visible for other people. And this means that if people actually, this is not visible for the other party because they only see the tip of the iceberg and you only see the tip of the iceberg. So this means that if you're both reacting from under the water level to what's above the water level, you may really meet with very big challenges. I would also like to would like you to note that culture is not only related to geographical borders and to nationalities. It is also related to groups. It can be a community. It can be even related to your specific expertise or to the nature of their business. So be aware of that. And another thing is that culture tends to change. If you look at different generations, you will notice that the new generations have different patterns and habits than the older generations. Actually, diversity and inclusion is not about offering the same conditions to everybody. It's about creating conditions that actually lead to equal opportunities. So it's situational. You look at what a person needs. A lot of this is perception. It depends very much on how you look at the world. We already talked about that your cultural makeup depends on how you have been exposed to different cultures and so on. So you tend to actually look at things from your own preferences and habits. And it's very important that you realize then that you tend to project your own needs and likes on other people. Now, the good thing is that if you have a multicultural team, that you can actually find best practices by cross-fertility. As long as you're open-minded and flexible, and if you stay curious, because then you might discover very different approaches that you'd never thought of and that actually work well. I would like to share this video with you, and let's see what you recognize.
Trip Crosby
has joined the meeting. Has joined the meeting.
Hello?
Tyler.
No, this is Beth from ICS.
Oh, hey, Beth. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Yeah. Just making it.
Tyler.
Has joined the meeting.
All right, well, this is Trip. Who's here? Tyler's here.
Beth's here.
Okay, the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the... Yeah, I'll be able to do it in like 30 minutes. John.
Has joined the meeting.
John, I was just trying to go over the purpose of today's meeting, which is to discuss the deliverable. Tyler.
Has joined the meeting.
Sorry, guys, I got cut off. Is Paul here? Send him an invite.
Put in your access code.
No, that's your PIN number. It should be a 9-digit number. Try pressing the pound key.
Has joined the meeting.
Any questions before we move on?
Yes, this is Beth. What's our best plan of attack for the second quarter?
Question actually.
We should do.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think what we should do.
It actually depends on how you look at it, because the
really come.
Go ahead.
Given sales forever.
Let me just say that, okay. That's a great graph, John. Tyler?
Well, my main concern with the projections from Gier was that they're just insufficient. I mean, they're not even taking into account.
Did we lose Tyler again?
Hello?
John, are you guys taking distributions? John? Oh, my bad. I was on mute. Let me start over. So I prepared a presentation. I'm sharing it with all of you. You should be able to see it on your screen right now.
Got it.
I don't see a link anywhere. It says I need to download a plugin.
We are all using Macs, I'm assuming.
Now, I guess that a lot of you people are chuckling now. I was when I first saw the video because I recognized quite a lot about it. I also chuckled when I saw this on my Twitter and on my WhatsApp. As a matter of fact, I recognize quite a few of them since we, my team and I, we have also been meeting virtually over the past 3 weeks, and this happens all the time. So let's do another poll because I wonder, how much do you recognize of this bingo map? Take a few seconds, yeah? We'll give you a few more seconds, yeah. Oh, I see. A lot of people have been getting a bingo this week. So did I. I had a full card many, many times. Oh, also some people that are quite moderate. Let's see. I end the poll now, guys. Yeah, yeah, one more second. Okay, let's share the results. Okay, we see that there are some people like me who had a full card quite a few times, but the majority seems to recognize like 5 to 9. Now, if we look at this chart, at the bingo chart itself, then we see that actually some of these aspects are already quite culturally decided. Like, for example, sorry, I'm late can have a very different perception in one culture towards another culture, where time is actually dealt with in a different way. And let's move on is the same thing, because to what extent are you focusing on the outcome of the meeting, and to what extent do you want to build your relationship? Now, and of course, now that we're all forced into this virtual work environment and not really by choice, people are trying to adjust, and you have the dogs barking, the kids playing, and so on, because not everybody has a professional environment yet. All right. Let's go to the next slide about that, now that I say about these dogs, because there is some virtual etiquette. On the left picture, you see what we would call the digital nomads that are now actually living all over the world, and they have a different standard, because in their world, it's accepted that you take advantage of the climate where you have chosen to live and to do your job at a distance. So their dress code is different. But now we are forced into this through the Corona period, and it means that actually the expectation is kind of different. And I really advise you to wear proper business attire, at least for what they can see. But I can trust you, I'm really wearing my heels. And so pay attention to that and don't become sloppy, because if you dress sloppy, you also are less concentrated and maybe less able to really bring forward the interests of your company and your objectives. Another thing about virtual teams, there are a lot of advantages. Here you see them. Now, if we look at the advantages and the things that are actually lifted up by working virtually, we can also see that this might be really springing from cultures that are very focused on facts and results, because productivity, efficiency are really, characterize this kind of culture. But on the other hand, you see autonomy. And in the Netherlands, autonomy is appreciated. But in some other countries, people adhere more to hierarchy and appreciate if they're being told what they're supposed to do and what result they're supposed to deliver. They find autonomy quite difficult, so be aware of that. Now, there's also some experts that actually suffer from virtual teamwork. We see them on the right-hand side. Now, these are aspects that really need to be paid attention to, because communication is, of course, very different when you do it virtually, but also communication, and especially the positioning that is expressed in the communication, is in other cultures maybe more important, because seniority plays a role, or the expertise, the diplomas you have, position you in a certain way in the team, but also the way you address people. Informal, formal, indirect communication, direct communication. And also virtual teamwork does not allow for so much, doesn't give much room to expressing emotions. And if emotions are expressed, then sometimes they may be taken in a different way. So be careful about this and pay attention to it. It all depends on the type of team you have. First of all, if I refer to the video we just saw, you saw the first two people joining that meeting had never met before in real life. So it's very important that you realize in the virtual teamwork, do they know each other? Have they ever met in person? So prior to the meeting, you need to create a room for maybe informal one-on-one meetings. Then you have the structure. I already mentioned seniority, authority, and so on. In some countries, your expertise gives you a level of authority and seniority, and it's important in the hierarchy. Now, if you're from a culture like that, and you come to a culture where actually the one that has the expertise can be younger and more autonomous, then you may be confused. And the other way around, if you come from a country where anybody who knows best what is the best solution can voice that and actually contribute to the team, you may be confused if you come into a system where hierarchy and seniority play a role, and actually it seems as if they ignore your very smart ideas. So the cultural composition of your team is really something to take carefully into account. Then another aspect in virtual teamwork. If you look at my generation, I was brought up with the dial phone. So I really had to acquire quite a lot of skills to stand here in front of you. If you look at the younger generations, they were practically born with a smartphone in their hands. So they deal very different with all the ways of communication. And this also has an effect on norms in communication, because what they consider normal, an elder person might consider impolite, because they don't say in their WhatsApp, dear so-and-so, may I please, how are you? No, they just say what they want to report to you, and they just bluntly ask what they need from you. So don't be offended by colleagues from a different generation. Another aspect is role division. In real life, it's already difficult to have very clear borders between different tasks and responsibilities. You can imagine that in a virtual meeting, this is even more important. And especially if people maybe haven't met before. So pay a lot of attention, maybe outside the real meeting, to make sure that people understand what their contribution to the meeting is supposed to be, and when and what and they have to present. So you don't surprise them during the meeting and maybe make them feel uncomfortable. You have to be very careful about that. So allow for one-on-ones. In making an intercultural team in the virtual environment successful, you have a number of aspects. And maybe you guys know more aspects. Please feel free to enter them in the Q&A and to bring it into the discussion. But I think the most important one is to build trust. Because if you trust one another, you very easily create transparency, and you create an environment where people can give each other feedback, learn from one another, and find the best practices. In doing so, of course, you always need to observe the common goal. But how do you set common goals? And are they always understood in the same way when people are from different intercultural backgrounds? And again, positioning is also important in deciding whether a team can function successfully. But if you happen and are successful in creating these conditions, you will see that a lot of creativity will spring from it. Now, building trust, how do you do it? What is building trust? Do you trust somebody else to help you and to lift you to the next level? Or do you actually want to create a bond? And in that bond, make sure that you never let each other down, and that you support one another and share expertise and help each other develop your best skills. That could be, huh? And it's very important in building trust. But building trust, it actually, the level of trust and the kind of trust that you develop depends on two aspects. And again, that is related to culture. Are you a person that likes to rely on facts and figures, on analytics, before you trust somebody or trust a plan or a decision? Or are you the one who confides in persons, in people, and who actually goes by intuition? I see that you guys, oh wow, I'm happily surprised to see so many people that actually rely on their intuition in building trust. A few more seconds, guys. Let's see. We've closed the poll. I'll show you. You see, the majority of you people trust on intuition, and other people have selected facts and numbers, and none of them is good or bad. It's the balance between the two of them. But I have to say, in building trust, I consider intuition a little bit more important, and I will explain to you why. Let me see. I have a slide for this. Yes, here we are. Because you see, in balancing the facts towards the intuition, there's another angle that actually influences how this works out in building trust. And that's whether you take the negative or the positive approach. Do you have a very optimistic expectation of the results and the outcome and the way the relationship in the team and with your colleagues will develop? Or do you have a slightly negative expectation? And do you want to see proof first? Actually, the best way to build trust in an intercultural team, in a virtual environment, is to have a slightly stronger intuition than that you rely on the facts and figures, and take the positive approach to have an optimistic expectation, because that means that you will trust the other people, your colleagues, even when something goes wrong. You give them the benefit of the doubt. If you are slightly more into the analytics and the facts, but still you take the positive approach, you will trust people until something happens and you feel that they have proven themselves wrong. And I would really recommend that if this happens to you and you lose your trust because something has proven wrong, try to rely on intuition. Now, if we look at the downside, if you have a cautious approach and you feel that facts are more important than your intuition, then it's very important that you realize that people have to prove themselves, and that in a way you make them actually pass like an exam before you trust them. And you will be suspicious until they have booked results. And if you are intuitive and you are cautious, then it's really very difficult. And you have a long way to go, because it means that even if people prove that they want to contribute, they prove they have good intentions, you will still remain kind of suspicious. So please, people, try to move more than 3 and 4 in building your relationship within the team in a virtual environment with multinational background. And only in that way you can build transparency. And you can deal with transparency. Now, transparency is, again, something that's culturally defined. Because some cultures, they feel transparency is that you go directly to the one that you want to discuss something with, or somebody who you feel is actually limiting your results or damaging the effort of the team, or a colleague who is slacking behind. You go directly to this colleague and communicate that. But on the other hand, you have cultures where they communicate like in a triangle. And they will not tell you directly, they will go to somebody else who's also close to you, and they will tell this person what problem they may have with your way of performing. And then this person will come to tell you. Now, the funny thing is that the direct culture will experience this as sneaky, whereas the indirect culture, where they work in the triangle, feels that the direct way is very offensive. And this goes not only between geographical borders and cultures, but also in age groups. And the virtual environment makes that, you know, the very strong and clear red line of communication is more vague, because people contact each other all the time on WhatsApp, on Twitter, on whatever. And they share information one-on-one and with groups. And it's important to be transparent, because that will help you to build the trust again. Now, the third aspect. Setting common goals. Now, everybody contributes to the common and shared goal. But to define the goal and how to get there is again something where culture plays a very big role. First of all, what do you see as your goal? Is it the outcome, the result, the profit? What is it? Because in some cultures, the goal is rather that you remain harmony and that you're a very good and strong team. Another thing is how you deal with time. In some cultures, time is time. Like us, we started today at 1, we're there at 1. In other cultures, if you say you start at 1, you might be there 10 minutes before, or you might be 15 minutes late. It's flexible time. So also these things, how do you deal with deadlines? How do you deal with the delivery of what your part of the puzzle for the goal is? It's very important to really check this with all the members in your intercultural team, especially when it's virtual, because people don't want to be embarrassed when you're with the group online, because it's more difficult to read the body language. The fourth one. Here we come again to the hierarchy and the seniority. Because imagine, you're from a culture where seniority and hierarchy is paramount. And you're very used to this structure. Now all of a sudden you end up in a startup company where everybody is very autonomous and does his own thing and seems to be able to define their own results and goals. You may get lost. Other way around, if you're from this network kind of organization and you start working in a virtual team where hierarchy is very strong, then you might feel that your wonderful contributions and ideas are not being appreciated and that you're being annoyed. Now, let's see. If we really look at all these things, how could you then work together and maybe create an atmosphere where everybody trusts one another and has very clear view on what their contribution is going to be? And then you might be surprised, because you will get very much creative ideas. And people feel comfortable and they feel appreciated, and they will feel free to contact you directly. And maybe they do so. Don't feel like, oh, you can say that in a meeting, because maybe somebody's coming from a culture where it's, they don't want to lose face. So they want to check with you first whether they have the support of the colleagues before they bring it in the virtual meeting. I think we're coming to the end of this presentation. I cannot say enough, this is already true in real life, but even more important so in the virtual team. Expressing appreciation. Let your colleague know when you're happy with what they provided for you, if the information comes in time, if they have really sourced something that you had overlooked. Be appreciative, and not only one-on-one, but also when you have a group meeting, because in virtual group meetings, I can promise you compliments are being heard, and this does something between the colleagues to build the trust, the confidence, and the respect. Now, one thing I did not yet mention, because if you have a virtual team, you may be very spread out around the world in different time zones, different geographical zones, and that means that you have to take care when you plan projects, because everybody has different holidays. The Indians have their Holi, the Chinese have Chinese New Year, we know the Ramadan, we know Christmas. It is very important to check the calendar, especially for long-term projects, to make sure that the dates that you expect delivery of something are not crashing with their holiday planning. Yeah. I think this is about it. I see a lot of interesting questions coming in. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, what I've told you now is just like a brief overview and only scratching the surface. Our expertise is really to make it, well, we have another standard programs, as you see here. Please visit our website and you can see that we have the different programs for different target groups. Not only expats that go abroad are being relocated, also for new arrivals, and also for people that started out as a refugee and acquired a status and are now integrating in the Dutch labor market. And please visit our website so you can see more about that. I think we go into the questions now. Oh, I forget something. I want to introduce Simone Buizen to you. Simone Buizen is one of our senior trainers, and as Corona measures have been extended, we've decided to do this every 2 weeks for the coming few months. And Simone will do next time, and she will talk about corporate values and how to translate them in a cross-cultural context. So please stay tuned with us for the next one. Now, let me see the questions. I first have a sip of water, guys. Let me see. Somebody is asking me here. Let me see. Intuition about own perspective. Let me see. Oh, how to keep people engaged and focusing online meetings. Well, I hope we have managed to do that. But in a regular meeting, it's very important that you keep track, not only if you are the leader of the president of the meeting, but also if you're just participating in a meeting, keep track if all the people present have actually voiced their views and their ideas. And if people keep very quiet, but you do see them online, specifically ask them, how do you see this? Do you have an idea? And if you don't want to confront them in the meeting because they're not saying anything, it's outside the meeting, what I said about transparency and the very frequent contacts you have, you can contact them outside the meeting and ask them, was there something going on? Can I help you because I think you had a great idea? Or can I help you because I have the feeling that this conflicts with your interest? So it's not only in the meeting, it's also outside the meeting. And let me see for another one. I have worked in this international team for over a year, but now we all have to work from home. This is new for the whole team. So I'm looking for some practical tips such as how to organize an efficient online meeting. Okay, which includes a translator. Well, this is indeed very complex. How to do this? Yes, I am not sure because I would like to think about this because I think you need a technical solution for the translator as well. But first of all, you need to talk one-on-one with the team to make them confident with the way of working and with the way of meeting. And also, they know each other, right? Let me see, Anke. let's open your microphone for a minute so you can explain to me what you're really looking for. Just a second. Anke Verheij. Yes, Anke, welcome. You can
Yeah,
talk.
hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, so what I'm actually looking for is a way, most of all, to have the team engaged in the conversation. And for example, that at some point there's a discussion in a different language. And it's it's difficult to see where the discussion is about and when, as the leader of the meeting,
meaning the role as a leader of
when
the
to
meeting
take the conversation back.
Okay, all right. We will mute you again, and I will reply to you. So what Anke is saying, actually, if this happens in a meeting, what you do, like you do in a regular meeting, you say, hold it a second, and you address the person who is actually talking in a different language, and you say, let me summarize for you what we've just discussed, and let me bring you up to speed. Yeah, and then I'm not sure whether the person doesn't understand the common language, because if there's no common language, I would strongly recommend that you don't do this virtually, or you need to find a very good solution. Yeah, because of course in virtual meeting, it's even more important that you have a shared language, even if it's your second or your third. All right, body language. Misha, hi Misha. You're asking in a real meeting, you can react on body language. How do you do that in virtual meeting? Well, that's something you have to learn, because you only see the post stamp, right? Especially if you're 8 or 10 people in a meeting, you see all the little post stamps. So if you suspect that somebody is actually trying to tell you something non-verbal, you have to really ask a question. But again, it's subject to the culture, because sometimes your question may be felt as offensive. Same like sometimes in some cultures, the way you try to explore what somebody is experiencing is actually felt as abrasive and offensive, whereas the person doing that might feel that he's just showing interest. So let me see another one. Here, how can you enhance commitment, and what easy programs can you link them with, or easy methods can you advise them to use if people are not used to working in a workspace, in a virtual workspace? I can tell you, my team was not used to working in a virtual workspace. Our trainers are very skilled because we do remote coaching. So our trainers were very skilled, but our back office, they had to get used to it too. And we have started this only a few weeks ago with the back office, and we feel actually this Zoom and MS Teams works quite well. But on the technical aspect, we are not experts on that. And again, I want to stress, it's very important that you prepare people and you make them feel confident. And prior to the meeting, you let them know what you expect from them. So, are there any other? All right, I see an anonymous attendee, and he says, if a colleague wants to call me more often than it's actually required and we are busy, how do we communicate that we do not have time to connect virtually as often? This is actually an intercultural issue, I guess, because the other colleague might just be trying to find out what you really expect from them. This is really, you can explain that actually this is, oh, just a second. So you need to I need to know more about the intercultural background and what your own preferences are, because if you feel that they're calling you too often, first of all, you need to investigate what is my own expectation and a pattern in this, and what's my habit, and be curious and try to explore what the other's expectation and need and habit is, and then try to work it out from there. It also depends, are you the manager or are you talking about a colleague, right? And take this into consideration. Vincent, hi Vincent, we know each other. In managing virtual teams, most of us take decisions based on intuition, see the poll. But you also need to learn to interpret facts, figures, numbers, etc., to help you in taking decisions as a team leader. Do you have any tips on that? Well, actually, this presentation is about the intercultural aspect on that. And of course, you always need to find a balance between the two. But in starting out working virtually, it's very important, Vincent, to follow your intuition. And to, of course, you need to balance it with the facts. But if you have an open mind and you dare to trust your intuition, you have more room to explore and to experiment and to find the best practices. And if you want to talk about this in depth, feel free to call me. Yeah. Let's see. How are we doing in the time? Maybe one or two people would like to ask a live question. You can raise your hand if you want to. Anyone raising hands? Let me see. I don't see any hands raised yet. Oh, yes, I see a raised hand. Let me see. Who are you? Let me see. Just a second. Trying to. Yes, we will allow you to talk. Gita van S. Yes. Hello, Gita.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. So my question would be, I also polled, let's say, build trust based on intuition, but I also know that intuition is really strongly connected to reading, seeing body language,
It is.
sort of interpreting reactions from other people. Although we try to do the video conferencing, it is a whole lot more difficult to really see the people and to hear their voice.
Yes.
Actually, it has become a lot harder to build on intuition, to be honest. I had some difficult messages to give this week, and I could not see any reaction of the people, and it's not nice. So now my first reaction, my initial plan was to call everyone up and to ask how are they doing. But you know, what would be a more, let's say, a less formal way to do a sort of check and balance of where people stand?
Actually, what you're suggesting, Gita, is the right way to do, because if you work in a virtual context, we tend to plan the meetings and we tend to forget how it happens when you're in a physical room together. Because if you're in a physical space together, an office, you go and walk and wash your hands or to get a coffee or a tea, and you incidentally meet somebody and you will incidentally inquire and say something friendly or whatever. Now, if you're working in a virtual team, it's very important that you sometimes ring people without a reason. And that would also build the trust. Yeah. So what you suggested, that you want to call all of them, it depends on how you organize it, whether it will feel formal or informal. Does this help you?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, feel free to send me a note, and I can talk to you again if you need more advice. Yeah?
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else like to ask a live question? Well done. Let me see. No? Yeah, you have another one? No? Actually, I'm also running out of time, guys. And I want to mention for a last time that this whole webinar has been recorded and we will share it online. And also, if you have been registered with us, we'll email you the link. So thank you again. Thank you so much for joining me. And I wish you a lot of wisdom to deal with the corona that we're facing now, the virus and all the limitations that it actually come with it. And I really hope to see you again when Simone in another 2 weeks will present her part. Thank you. Bye.